Have you ever noticed how the people you love the most seem to hurt you the easiest? A late reply suddenly feels personal. A small disagreement turns into hours of overthinking. Someone gets a little distant, and your mind immediately starts preparing for rejection. And maybe the strangest part is this. You know you're reacting too strongly. You know the situation probably isn't as serious as it feels. But you can't stop feeling it. So you tell yourself you're just sensitive, or needy, or difficult to love. But what if none of those things are true? What if the habit that's quietly damaging your relationships today started long before you ever fell in love? Long before you met your friends? Long before you became the person you are now? Because some relationship problems aren't born in relationships. They're born in childhood. Imagine this. You're talking to someone you care about. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's a close friend. Everything seems fine. Then one day, they become a little quieter than usual. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just different. And suddenly something shifts inside you. You start replaying conversations, wondering if you did something wrong, looking for signs, searching for clues, trying to predict what's about to happen. You tell yourself you're being ridiculous, but the anxiety keeps growing anyway. Hours pass, then days, and before you know it, you're emotionally exhausted by a problem that might not even exist. If you've ever experienced that, you're not alone. In fact, there's a good chance it has very little to do with the present moment. Because many people enter adult relationships carrying a childhood habit they never realized they learned. A habit that once protected them, but now quietly sabotages connection. The habit is simple. Constant emotional scanning. Always checking the room. Always checking people's moods. Always checking for signs that something is wrong. At first, it sounds harmless. Even responsible. But stay with me, because this is where things get interesting. Imagine a child growing up in a home where emotions felt unpredictable. Maybe a parent was loving one day and distant the next. Maybe arguments appeared without warning. Maybe tension filled the house so often that the child learned something important. Pay attention. Watch carefully. Stay alert. Because if you can predict people's emotions, maybe you can protect yourself. So the child becomes an expert observer. They learn how to read facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, silence. Tiny shifts most people never notice. And at the time, it makes sense. Children adapt to survive. They do whatever they need to feel safe. The problem is, that child eventually grows up. But the habit stays. Now they're sitting across from a loving partner. And their nervous system is still acting like it's preparing for danger. A delayed text message feels suspicious. A tired tone of voice feels threatening. A quiet evening feels like emotional distance. Not because they're irrational, but because their brain learned long ago that small changes often meant something bad was coming. Pause for a moment. Think about your own relationships. How often do you find yourself trying to read between the lines? Trying to figure out what someone is really thinking, trying to spot problems before they happen. Now ask yourself something deeper. Are you responding to what's actually happening? Or are you responding to what happened years ago? Because those are not always the same thing. And that's where many relationships begin to suffer. Not from a lack of love, but from a lack of emotional safety. The kind of safety that allows you to relax, to stop monitoring, to stop preparing, to stop expecting disappointment. Here's the difficult truth. When you spend years scanning for danger, you eventually start finding danger everywhere, even where it doesn't exist. Partner says they need some time alone. You hear rejection. A friend forgets to reply. You hear abandonment. Someone seems distracted. You hear disinterest. The story changes, but the fear stays the same. And over time, that fear creates behaviors that push people away. You seek reassurance, then feel guilty for needing reassurance. You become emotionally reactive, then criticize yourself for being emotional. You crave closeness, then panic when closeness finally arrives. It's exhausting, and most people don't even realize why they're doing it. They think they're broken, but they're not broken. They're protecting themselves. using strategies that made sense years ago, strategies that simply don't fit their current life anymore. Let's look at another example. Imagine a child who constantly felt responsible for keeping peace in the family. Maybe they became the mediator, the problem solver, the one who never caused trouble. Over time, they learned something dangerous. Other people's emotions are my responsibility. And that belief follows them into adulthood. Now every conflict feels like their fault. Every disappointment feels like something they need to fix. Every uncomfortable emotion feels like an emergency. So they work harder, give more, apologize more, sacrifice more, until one day they realize they're carrying relationships entirely by themselves. And they're exhausted, because healthy relationships were never meant to be managed by one person. They were meant to be shared. Here's something most people never hear. The goal isn't to stop caring. The goal isn't to become cold. The goal isn't to stop loving deeply. The goal is learning the difference between caring and carrying. Many people spend their lives carrying emotions that were never theirs to hold. Pause and reflect for a second. How much of your energy goes toward managing other people's feelings? How often do you feel responsible for keeping everyone happy? And how often does that leave you feeling invisible? Because invisible needs don't disappear. They simply wait. They wait until resentment appears, until burnout appears, until loneliness appears. And then suddenly you're wondering why relationships feel so heavy. The answer may be simpler than you think. You've been carrying too much for too long. But there's another childhood habit that often hides underneath all of this. People-pleasing. Many children discover early that love feels safest when they're useful, when they're good, when they're easy, when they don't ask for too much. So they become exactly what everyone needs them to be. The responsible one, the understanding one, the mature one, the strong one, and everyone praises them for it. But there's a hidden cost. They slowly lose touch with themselves. Because when your entire life revolves around meeting other people's expectations, you eventually forget your own needs. Then relationships become confusing. You don't know what you want. You only know what keeps everyone else comfortable. And that's not connection. That's survival. Real connection requires honesty. Even when honesty feels uncomfortable. Even when honesty risks disappointing someone. Because people cannot truly love a version of you they've never actually met. Think about that for a moment. How many relationships know the real you? Not the helpful version. Not the strong version. Not the easy version. The real version. The one with fears, needs, boundaries, emotions. Because healing begins the moment you stop performing and start showing up honestly. Not perfectly, honestly. And here's the realization that changes everything. The habit ruining your relationships isn't neediness. It isn't sensitivity. It isn't weakness. It's survival. Old survival patterns trying to protect you from pain that already happened. But the past is not your present. The people in front of you are not the people who hurt you. And while that doesn't erase your wounds, it changes how you carry them. The child who learned to scan every room for danger deserved safety. The child who learned to manage everyone else's emotions deserved support. The child who learned to earn love deserved unconditional love. And that child still exists inside you, still trying to protect you, still trying to keep you safe. But maybe they don't have to work so hard anymore. Maybe the strongest thing you can do isn't predicting every problem. Maybe it's trusting that not every moment is a threat. Maybe it's allowing yourself to be seen, to be imperfect, to ask for reassurance when you need it, to express needs without shame, to believe that love doesn't have to be earned every single day. Because healthy relationships aren't built on constant vigilance. They're built on safety. And safety begins when you stop treating connection like something you have to survive, and start treating it like something you're allowed to experience. So the next time you catch yourself overanalyzing a text message, or assuming the worst, or blaming yourself for someone else's emotions, ask yourself one question. Is this really about today? Or is a younger version of me trying to protect me from yesterday? Because sometimes the habit that's ruining your relationships is the same habit that once helped you survive. And healing begins when you finally realize you don't need to survive love anymore.